Hello, class. Today we are going to begin taking some notes on atoms, ions, and isotopes, how they're the same, how they're different. So take out a piece of paper. If you need a piece of paper, let me know. I can get you one. And we're going to continue taking some Cornell notes as we've been doing, 2-column notes, making sure that you get the title on there. Don't forget your name, date, class, and period. And we're going to start with what is an atom? What is it made of? And how can we identify an element? Okay. First of all, an atom is the smallest unit of matter. We've been talking about all these different particles and how they react with each other. Those particles are atoms, which is the smallest unit of matter. We also talked about compounds. When you take two atoms, two different types of atoms, and put them together, we can create a compound. But the atom is basically the building block of everything. So, what are atoms made of? They're made of protons, electrons, and neutrons. And we're going to get into more of each of those. But the important one to remember is protons, because the number of protons tells us what element we have. So, if you look at the periodic table, and we'll show you this in a minute here. But if you look at the periodic table, there's an atomic number at the top of above each of the symbols, and that gives us the identification number or the number of protons. You don't necessarily need to take notes on this, just know how these work. These are a couple of different diagrams of atoms. So you can do them in a couple of different ways. But you'll see that they all have the same things. They have these shells, which are orbitals, or sometimes we call them energy levels. We'll talk about that later. In the center is the nucleus. And around the outside, like I said, are the energy levels with the electrons. So let's put this all together. What are the parts of the atoms? If you want to draw this one out, you can. This one's a little bit better because it's showing you the electrons, protons, and neutrons, what's what. So protons are positively charged and found in the nucleus. Electrons are negatively charged and they're found in the different energy levels, as we talked about a little bit earlier. And neutrons have no charge and they're found in the nucleus as well with the protons. You can see in the center here the red and the blue being positively charged protons and the neutrons are neutral. Okay, and this is a carbon atom. And if we were able to see it all, we would see that it would have 6 protons, probably 6 neutrons, and also 6 electrons. Um, so there's that carbon that I was talking about. So more about protons. Protons have an atomic mass of 1 AMU. And as we said earlier, there the number of protons determines the element. So if you look at the symbol, this is what I was talking about a little bit earlier here. Above that is what's called the atomic number. Okay, so the atomic number, that's this right here. So that's this. I can't do that very well, but the atomic number gives us the number of protons. Okay. Once you change the number of protons, you've changed what the element is. And we'll go back to some more of these other things later. And more about electrons. Electrons, basically, they don't have any mass. It's so small, it's hard to quantify. Um, so when an atom uh, when an atom gains or loses an electron, it's called, I forgot to, I didn't get these over here. It's called an ion. Okay. So what are ions? It's when atoms gain or lose electrons. There are two different types of ions. We have cations, which are positive ions. You got positive charge, and anions are negatively charged. Okay. Just know which is which, cation being positive, anion being negative. A couple of ways that we get, oops, let's go back really quick. Sorry. A couple of ways that we get these ions. Cation is a positive ion when an atom loses an electron, and an anion is a negative ion when atoms gain electrons. Okay, I have a little um, diagram here so you can see kind of what's going on. Loss of electron over on this side creates a positive, gain of electron on the other side creates an anion, negative charge. Remember that electrons are negatively charged, so if I add more electrons, I become more negatively charged. All right, so let's talk about the difference between atoms and ions. And you can take notes on this if you want to or not. Atoms are neutral, okay? They have the same number of protons and electrons, okay? The number of protons define what kind of an element is. An ion, on the other hand, is charged. So there are different number of protons and electrons. And um, it may contain one or more atom. I don't really care about this right now. We'll talk more about that later. Okay, but those are the two big things that we want to look at. And the last part here. Um, More about neutrons. Neutrons have an atomic mass of 1 AMU. AMU stands for atomic mass unit. It's just these things are so small that they have to be given a different number. And the number of them in the nucleus can change. Okay. So looking at the picture down below, you see that this hydrogen 1, this hydrogen 1 here, has no neutrons in it, just a proton. Hydrogen 2 has one neutron, one proton. And hydrogen 3 has two neutrons and one proton. So the mass number changes as you add more neutrons. Notice that the number of protons never changes, but the neutrons does. So what is an isotope? Basically, what we're doing down here is changing the number of neutrons. That's what we're talking about with isotopes. So hydrogen 1, hydrogen 2, and hydrogen 3 are all isotopes of each other. So atoms with the same element, same number of protons with different number of neutrons and different masses is an isotope. So a brief little summary of what we've learned so far. Atoms are composed of protons, neutrons, and electrons. Atoms are neutral. Ions are charged particles formed by gaining or losing electrons. And isotopes are atoms with the same number of protons but different number of neutrons, creating elements with different masses. Once you have completed writing down your notes, then you can move on to working on the review worksheet using your notes to help you with that. After you're done with the review worksheet, you will have a quiz in which you will not be allowed to use your notes. So make sure you understand what your notes are saying.